I have a really big problem with the people who advocate for the acceptance of the fact that we live in some kind of weird rape culture, because I fundamentally disagree with it, and I don't understand how anyone of critical thinking and the ability to look at our society and read the news and examine it is capable of accepting such a ridiculous concept. Yes, in the third world, women are blamed constantly for getting raped, are blamed constantly for appearing as sluts and asking for it. And occasionally you'll hear some retard say something like, oh, she was asking for it. But seriously, the majority of us, the rational thinking in our society, do not accept this kind of behavior as acceptable. And so you SJWs with your rape culture claims and your misogyny and your white patriarchal society garbage, like, you drive me crazy. So I'm making this video because I'd like to make an example out of Brock Turner, who is a horrible human being, and the horrible act that he committed against who they're referring to as Jane Doe. I've decided to rename you. From now on, Jane Doe will be referred to as Lux Aduro. And the reason that I'm renaming you this is because it's kind of a play on the Latin words for scorching light. And I feel that that is a very appropriate name for you now that I've read your statement to that piece of shit, Brock Turner. Lux, if you ever watch this video, which I'm 100% sure you won't, and I don't blame you, I wouldn't want to relive this kind of horror myself if I'd gone through it. I hope you know that I empathize. I wish you a long and happy life, as free of this horrible crime as possible. That out of the way, I need to now bring in the cancer that is everyday feminism into the conversation. Everyday Feminism, on its website of Cancer, has this horrible list of 20-something examples of rape culture, and this specific story debunks a lot of what they claim is rape culture, because they're coming from a place where women are not believed when they go to authorities. People who are accused of rape are never pursued for the rape. People accuse victims of being liars. People accuse victims of being career destroyers when they accuse athletes, such as this dipshit Turner. And the list goes on and on. I've linked the original article below, so feel free to take a gander through that list of... Now let's get into this shitstorm. Brock, arrested on January 18th, so keep the dates in mind, they're pretty important. Arrested on January 18th, two graduate students pretty much were cycling through Stanford and found this dipshit on top of a limp girl's body, and the graduate students made a statement in which they said that the reason that they stopped is because they couldn't see the girl moving underneath him, and he was like grinding up against her. Her body was like on the ground behind a garbage or a dumpster. Pretty much this is what I imagine the situation was like, because in her statement she talks about how there were pine needles in her hair, and there were constantly pine needles, and how awful it was that every time a pine needle came out of her hair, every time they pulled them out to put them in a bag for forensic evidence, she realized again and again that even though she doesn't remember this happening because she was blacked out, that she relives the possibility of what happened to her. And so these graduate students that were riding their bikes by, they found her around 1 a.m. and that right after the incident happened, Brock Turner was taken to the police station, and he was interviewed by a Mike Kim. We'll get to that in a second. So he did withdraw from Stanford, and he did lose a very prestigious swimming scholarship, as if that's like, oh yeah, pat on the back, Brock dipshit, because you willingly withdrew from a university after being literally caught red-handed committing rape. There were originally 5 charges against Brock Turner, and 2 of them were subsequently dropped. The 5 charges were rape of an intoxicated person, rape of an unconscious person, sexual penetration of an intoxicated woman, sexual penetration of an unconscious woman, and assault with intent to commit rape. Of these 5, the first 2 were dropped. So rape of an intoxicated person and rape of an unconscious person were dropped, and he was convicted by a jury of his peers of sexual penetration of an intoxicated woman, sexual penetration of an unconscious woman, and an assault with intent to commit rape. So I feel very comfortable calling this piece of shit a rapist, because he was convicted by a jury of his peers of pretty much intending to commit rape. And the fact that they couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that this unconscious, limp woman was not, didn't give him consent at one point during the party, doesn't mean that he didn't rape Lux. So I'm going with it. So the Stanford Department of Public Safety detective, Mike Kim, the one that I mentioned earlier, he questioned Turner about 5 or 6 hours after his arrival at the Stanford police station, and this was on January 18th. So this is the same night that the party happened. 1 a.m. he's discovered by the 2 graduate students. He's chased down and caught by these graduate students. Originally, his attorneys tried to do some bullshit about how they wanted to press charges against the grad students for beating the crap out of him. He's taken to the police station, and a few hours later, he's interviewed by Mike Kim. On Wednesday, March 23rd, so just a few months ago, he testified on the stand that Lux Aduro, who's 23, and a Palo Alto resident, she consented to his sexual advances, and he consented to everything that they did that night. He claimed that she was conscious and that she was eager and that she was kissing him and thrusting her hips back at him on the ground behind the dumpster, the trash can, and she also consented to him penetrating her with his fingers. So keep that in mind. And now we go back to the night of the actual event where he's talking to the investigator, to the detective, and he says to the detective, when Mike Kim asks him how he ended up on the ground behind the dumpster on top of Lux, and if he was given permission, he said, "I don't remember." So this piece of shit says to the detective on the night that he's interviewed, how did you end up behind the dumpster? How did you end up on top of this girl? Did you get permission to finger fuck her? He says, "I don't remember." But on the day of, he's all like, yeah, she was kissing me, she was thrusting back, she was doing all this stuff. I asked permission if I could finger fuck her. She said yes. You are such a terrible person, and the fact that you're still lying makes you an even bigger piece of shit. So the jury, which is consisting of 4 women and 8 men, they deliberated for 2 days. I don't know how to read into that. I've never been on a jury. I've never done jury duty. But from what I have seen in documentaries, film documentaries about justice, it's pretty evident that sometimes there's a negotiation, a standoff between the people with the very large personality on the juries. Do we convict him of this, and what evidence do we have to that? And then you've got the preconceived notions of people of what they think is rape versus what the legal definition is of rape, and all these things, and they have to take their mind. And for us humans, it's really hard for us to take our preconceived notions and eliminate them and look at something in an unbiased way. So they took 2 days to do this, and they came back with the sentencing, convicting him of 3 counts: sexual penetration of an intoxicated and unconscious woman, and the intent to commit rape. So the sentencing that took place is where they know that he's guilty, and then they come back and they say what he should be serving for his guilty sentence. And unfortunately, the judge does have the right to overturn the jury's recommendation and the DA's recommendation and make the actual conviction of what he's going to actually serve himself. And the judge decided that 6 months in jail, not prison, jail, And here's the definition of jail versus prison, and pretty much the difference is that he's in the county versus off to a separate facility that's further away. He's probably going to be in there with people that are awaiting sentencing, people that haven't been found guilty yet, or people that have been convicted of much minor crimes, and he'll be in there for 6 months. I don't know what the process is in the States for this, but I know that in Canada, once you're sentenced, you can serve like I think it's a third of that sentence, and then you can go up for a review board to see if you can be paroled. So following that 6 months, if he even serves 6 months, he could theoretically serve as little as 2 if my memory isn't failing me, which it usually does. And then he'll be on probation. So following 6 months, he'll be on probation, and he'll be listed as a sex offender. And yeah, pretty much that's the punishment. So the crime was I dragged a blackout drunk girl behind a dumpster at a frat party and finger raped her. And then I served a few months in jail and was stripped of my scholarship. So let's not pretend that that's a punishment that fits the crime. Brock piece of shit Turner's future looks kind of shitty. He's going to be on a sex registry list probably for the rest of his life, which he totally fucking deserves. And he also won't be eligible for joining the what's it called? The USA Swimming membership, USA Swimming organization. Pretty much the only downside that I found to this is that he won't be able to compete in their organizations, which are pretty like exclusive, elite, self-proclaimed elite, exclusive events. Hopefully he won't be able to ever make it to the Olympics. Hopefully he will never be able to coach young people. Hopefully he'll never be able to get any kind of recognition for his swimming, because that piece of garbage should really get some serious ramifications for what he did. But the reason that, like, and let's take this back and wrap it up and bring it back to rape culture. If rape culture was real, this is what would have happened to Brock and to Lux. Lux would have come forward and, okay, so Brock would have been found in that alleyway by those graduate students, and they would have been like, holy shit, dude, what are you doing? Get the fuck off of her. And then he would have run. They would have beat the shit out of him. And then they would have called the police. The police would have arrived on scene and been like, oh, what's going on here? And Brock would have been like, oh, there's this girl, like, I was just finger fucking her behind a dumpster. And the police would have high-fived him and left. Then the girl would have been like, but he raped me. And then Brock would have been like, you liked it, whatever. And then everybody would have called her a liar. Like, oh yeah, you just consented to having sex with him, and because you have a boyfriend, like, you regret it now, you're a liar. You're just trying to destroy Brock's upcoming amazing swimming career. And then the story would have been put to rest. Like, she would have gone to the hospital, they would have done the rape kit because she was outraged. And then the rape kit would have been processed and filed away as some kind of, like, rough alleyway fondling. Like, rape culture isn't real. Rape culture isn't real because, look, he got prosecuted and convicted of his crimes. So let's all stop this yammery bullshit about rape culture and focus on real issues. Like how when men want visitation with their children, they're less likely to get it. About how if a woman is sent to jail for this exact same crime as a man, she doesn't serve the same amount of time as him. Let's focus on those lackings in the sex equality, and less so on this made-up garbage. Like, if you really care about women, why don't you start advocating against the oppression of women by certain religions? Why don't you start advocating for all women to be going to school everywhere in the world? Why don't you start advocating for real issues instead of making a lot of noise about a thing that isn't even a thing? And before any of you get started about college rape statistics and how 1 in 5 or 1 in 4 or 1 in 1 women will be assaulted on a college campus, you should really look into that study, and you should find, when you look into it, that that statistic is taken out of a survey of a very small sample size of kids that we don't even know if they took the survey seriously. And really, the survey itself, I think it's like 1 in 50 for realsies. So calm your tits. Tits, calm.